In the sleepy town of Linwood, the peace was abruptly shattered by a frantic call to the police. When Officer Jane Turner picked up the phone, she was greeted with the panicked voice of Mrs. Whittaker, an elderly woman who lived near the old cryptic cemetery on Oak Street. "There's blood everywhere, officer. It's a massacre, a cat massacre," she gasped, her voice trembling as much as her hands. Officer Turner knew Mrs. Whittaker to be the neighborhood's chronic alarmist, but procedure demanded that all calls be treated with urgency. With her heart steady yet cautious, she arrived at Mrs. Whittaker's modest brick home shortly thereafter. Mrs. Whittaker greeted her at the door, her eyes wide and hands fluttering to her chest. "It's in the garden," she said, barely whispering. Officer Turner followed her to the backyard, preparing herself for the carnage she was about to witness. However, what she found wasn't a massacre. Instead, a fluffy ginger cat languidly sunned itself amid what indeed looked like puddles of blood. Upon closer inspection, Officer Turner realized that the red color staining the ground was not blood, but tomato juice. Confused yet relieved, she turned to Mrs. Whittaker, who was already knitting her brow in puzzlement. "I swear, officer, it looked like blood," Mrs. Whittaker insisted. The mystery was soon solved when Officer Turner noticed the remnants of a few smashed tomatoes strewn around. Not far off, a grocery bag lay open with a tomato among the other contents. Evidently, the tomcat had knocked over the groceries and rolled around in the mess, transforming what was once a fearsome scene of red into a laughable misunderstanding. With a sigh of relief, both women shared a hearty laugh, their initial tension now a simple anecdote to recount later at community gatherings. Officer Turner petted the cat, who purred contentedly, none the wiser about the panic it had caused. As Officer Turner drove back to the station, she couldn't help but chuckle at the thought of how sometimes the biggest alarms could turn out to be just a playful pet with a penchant for tomato chaos. In Linwood that day, a lesson was learned. Things aren't always what they appear to be, especially when a mischievous cat and fresh produce are involved.